Well, hello there, Vlad here. Welcome to my studio. Today I want to talk about 5 things that I think you should do with your Pod Go to get the most out of it. And a tiny bit of housekeeping before we move on. If you enjoyed the content, find it useful, please consider hitting the like button, the subscribe button, hit all the buttons on the screen and good things will happen. Leave a comment, ask me a question, things like that. They really help. And yeah, I think it is time to move on to the tip number 1. The first thing I think you should do is to check your global settings, which you by the way access by clicking on both of the page buttons at the same time, and then go to the global settings. And there's something called guitar in pad. And basically this thing is exactly what you think it is. If you have a guitar with high output pickups, you might consider turning this on. If you've ever played a tube amplifier, for example, you probably know that the harder the signal from your guitar is going into that clean channel of the tube amplifier, for example, it affects how quickly that amplifier starts distorting. But because it's a tube amplifier, it usually actually results in somewhat pleasant distortion. Whereas in a digital realm, if you start clipping the input of a digital unit, you'll get a very nasty sounding distortion that's in no way pleasant. I'm sure there's some people who absolutely love that sound, but most of us don't. And that's why if you have a guitar with hot pickups, you might want to turn the guitar pad in. I think it's minus 20 dB. If it's some other number, you should see that on the screen right now. This makes sure that no matter what kind of guitar you're using, you are not clipping the input of this unit, and all of the pedals and amplifiers and such will work as designed. Greetings from the editing desk, a small correction. Upon some further research, I realized that I don't think you can clip the input of the Pod Go, but that guitar pad in control does still affect how all of the pedals and amps and such react to your guitar. So if you have a really hot pickup in your guitar, you might want to turn that on, but if you're playing single chords, for example, you might want to take it off. So yeah, just wanted to clarify that. The tip number 2 actually shocked me how much of a difference it made, and I think I stumbled upon this in the Line6 Helix users Facebook group maybe. And the story is very simple. To make this unit as affordable as possible, Line6 saved on some things, that like the unit is more plasticky than the bigger Helix units and stuff like that. But they also saved on the input buffer in the Pod Go. And this means that if you don't have any pedals between your guitar and the Pod Go, you are going to lose some of the high end from your guitar sound. And a very simple way to fix that is to add a buffer. You obviously can have any kind of buffer. I'm going to use this Peterson's RoboStomp HD tuner, which I love, and it has a killer buffer in it. Let me demonstrate what a difference going straight from the guitar into the unit and adding a buffer in between makes. Tip number 3 is using custom IRs, and I dare to say that this might be the thing that actually makes the most difference, both kind of feel-wise and also sound-wise as well. I've loaded up an SX A30 presets AC30. Sounds very decent to me already. And it's using a 112 ribbon silver bell 2x12 cabinet, so some sort of Vox AC30 cabinet basically. But what if we drop a custom IR by Lancaster Audio? This is from Warren Hewitt's kind of producer pack, and let's just compare this. So this is the stock cabinet, and then Warren's cabinet. The sounds just open up. All of the muddiness is gone. And this pack has 3 different versions. Again, we went from this, if we go for the standard one. And just by changing the impulse response, we get this. Tip number 4 is using a compressor at the end of your signal chain. And I gotta give credit where credit is due. I saw this tip on Rhett Shull's channel, was kind of skeptical, and then ended up trying it, and it makes all of the difference. What I've been missing with a lot of the modelers is that kind of dynamics and kind of responsiveness that you get with a tube amplifier. I grew up playing tube amplifiers, and that will always be my reference point, I guess. And this is something that I spotted on Rhett's channel. He said to put a compressor at the end of the signal chain, just as the very last thing. I personally really like this LA Studio comp. It has a cool peak reduction thing. It kind of evens out your signal a bit as well, which is actually kind of useful for live situations. And it doesn't really affect the sound that much, but it feels very different to play in a good way, that is, obviously. So without... All of a sudden, this feels more real to play, if you will, where if I pick lightly, the sound is different than what it is when I pick hard, and kind of gets me back to my happy place of where I can control my sound just with my playing and don't even have to worry about stomping on any of these foot switches. I love it. That's a killer tip. Thanks, Rhett. And we have arrived to the tip number 5, which is get some presets made by others. And I know this might be a controversial topic for some of you, because I want to create my own presets. I know every single detail of this thing and stuff like that. I'm gonna call BS on that, because there's, I don't know, 100 amplifiers in the Helix, and I know that the controls and stuff like that are kind of modeled per amp, so different amps have different amount of controls and things like that. A lot of the Helix users are experts in different amps. Somebody, for example, could have an orange amp that the Line6 Helix range is modeling, and they have really spent time matching their real amplifier with the Helix sounds, or matching the Helix sounds to the real amplifier, that is. And there's just no way you'll be able to dial all those things. And that's where it's really cool to pay a few bucks to someone who has spent the time dialing the tones, and you just can get an arsenal of super inspiring sound. For example, if you check my PodGo edit, there's few presets I've created myself. There's a worship preset that we've actually been using here by Worship Tutorials. And what they've done here is taking a Tone King Imperial combo and created 2 different presets for a humbucker equipped guitar and a single coil equipped guitar. And what these guys have done is recording a great sound from that amplifier and then spend time tweaking the preset on the Helix range to make it sound as close as possible. And I think this just sounds really good. And what it also allows you to do is to just build a collection of cool sounds that inspire you to play. And for me personally, I love the Mesa Boogie Mark IV amplifiers. I used to have a combo, a ridiculously heavy, ridiculously loud combo in my studio and apartment back in the day. And I love the sound I was getting from it, but it's just so unpractical in a home studio setting. So what I can have here, and this preset is made by 3 Sigma Audio, I think. Pay them a few bucks and I can get this sound. And if I'm lazy to pull out my Rev G3 pedal, I can have that sound on the PodGo as well. Is it exactly the same sound? Probably not, but is it close enough? Absolutely yes. Upon me owning the PodGo, there's been several situations where I've downloaded one of the sounds and that immediately inspired me to write something. One example of this is, for example, the jam track that I very recently released. I was actually using the Worship Tutorials preset, but somehow instead of writing like worship music on this thing, I actually ended up doing a John Mayer inspired track, because those sounds kind of reminded me of some of the things he was doing, and I was inspired, wrote that whole thing in one sitting, and it was good to go. And that's what these presets can do for you as well for a very little money. And the community around this whole thing is huge. So I'm 100% sure you will be able to find some sounds that you really, really like. And there you have it. Those were my 5 tips on how to get the most out of your Pod Go. Was there something I missed? Let me know in the comment section down below. And there's other videos, subscribe buttons and things like that on the screen as well. Clicking any of those will be highly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. I shall see you next time.